Let's bring in MSNBC's Justice and Intelligence correspondent Ken Dilanian, MSNBC political contributor and Atlantic staff writer Mark Leibovich, and MSNBC legal analyst and former Manhattan Assistant DA Catherine Christian. Ken, are you hearing any pushback or concerns from inside the DOJ?
Well, yes, of course, Anna, and it's consistent with what I've been hearing from sources inside the building almost since the beginning of the Trump administration, because, again, I keep saying this, we've never been here before. Even in the first Trump administration, the Justice Department ran like a normal Justice Department, where it respected the rule of law, it respected the decisions of career prosecutors. The White House did not tell it, for the most part, what to investigate or what not to investigate. That is all out the window now. And so the people that have done business the same way for 30 years, some of them who have been there, although many of those people are leaving, are traumatized by this. Not just concerned, they're absolutely traumatized by what's been happening at the Justice Department, not only on criminal cases, but on all sorts of cases, antitrust cases, corporate monitor cases, the lack of enforcing the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act. But in this particular case, the idea that the White House would order the Justice Department to prosecute certain individuals goes against 50 years of the post-Watergate tradition of the Justice Department being independent of politics, and it's very troubling to people who work there.
Yeah, Catherine, your reaction to these very public calls out in the open, the president calling on his attorney general to prosecute his perceived political enemies?
Well, the reason why these prosecutors are traumatized, not because it's a tradition, it is so highly unethical for a prosecutor to choose people to prosecute for no reason other than, my boss hates them. You choose crimes. You choose cases that you can prove beyond a reasonable doubt, and let the chips fall where they may, as long as the facts and the evidence show it. But to just go after people just because they are perceived to be an enemy of the person who appointed you is just not what you do as an ethical prosecutor.
Do you have confidence that these prosecutors will hold the line?
Well, we have resignations, and the ones who don't hold the line will either be fired or not. But it's your duty as a prosecutor, particularly if you're senior. It's one thing to say I was young, I didn't know what I was doing. But to say my boss made me do it does not play if you're someone as senior as the high-ranking people who are in DOJ.
Mark, the DOJ is supposed to be independent. The judicial branch is supposed to serve as a check and balance on the executive branch. We are seeing that in some of the lower courts. But take a look at this. The White House has won 18 times with cases that made it to the Supreme Court since January. Only 2 losses. The Trump administration is on a 15-case winning streak, with their last shadow docket loss being back in May. Could that track record, do you think, be why the president is feeling so emboldened and is feeling he can make these statements publicly?
Probably, yeah. I mean, there are a lot of mechanisms within basically the Trump-friendly world, whether it's the Republican Party, whether it's his own administration, the Justice Department, whether it's, as he perceives it, the Supreme Court, that have given him a lot of confidence to be able to basically do what he wants. I mean, I think the thing that happens here is, look, the DOJ sounds, by all intents and purposes, like a total mess. I mean, Trump can say what he is saying, and it can sound, highly irregular, obviously, deeply unethical. I mean, you choose your words, but ultimately, you do need prosecutors who will make these cases. Many of them have left. Many of them have been fired. Many of them are quitting. Many of them want nothing to do with this. And if you happen to find prosecutors who are willing to do the bidding here, ultimately the system of justice in this country relies on facts, relies on bringing a case, relies on going in a courtroom and not committing perjury. And the actual details of bringing a case and getting a prosecution are extremely complicated, rightly. And it's not just a president of the United States, strange as it is, spouting off the way he is. So, look, I mean, there is a big disconnect between the president's words and what actually happens during prosecutions. And I think that hopefully will be the center that holds here.
Federal prosecutor Eric Siebert resigned Friday under pressure. And Catherine, you brought this up. This was the man who had the Letitia James case in his court. And our understanding is he said there wasn't a crime to pursue there after looking at the evidence. Now, he resigned. The president says no, he was fired. With so much happening, Catherine, help us understand how dangerous this is for our democracy.
It's very dangerous because if you do have prosecutors who will just ignore the facts and just present a case to the grand jury that they know they cannot prove beyond a reasonable doubt or even have probable cause. You're hoping that the grand jury will see through that and not bring an indictment. But if they don't see through that and do bring an indictment, then you've basically messed up someone's life. Eventually, yes, the court will see that and dismiss the indictment. But meantime, you have had your life destroyed. You've hired an attorney. And it's very frightening. It's like a star chamber. You just people being chosen not because they have actually committed a crime or we have been able to prove they committed a crime. It's just because they're perceived to have been the enemy or against whoever the person is, and in this case, the president appointed you as the prosecutor.
Ken, it's not just calling for investigations or prosecutions of certain people. You have exclusive reporting, along with our colleague Carol Leonnig, that shows the current DOJ and the FBI also stopped an investigation into a member of the Trump administration. Tell us all the details.
That's right. On a border czar, Tom Homan, although he wasn't border czar at the time, we're talking about September of last year, was recorded by the FBI accepting $50,000 in cash, according to multiple people familiar with the matter, in exchange for a promise to help these were undercover FBI agents posing as business executives to help these people get contracts in a future Trump administration. He was certain that he was going to have a high position in the administration. And so this was part of a significant FBI anti-corruption investigation. Some prosecutors thought he could have been charged at the time for conspiracy to commit bribery. Others said, no, let's wait and see what he does when he takes office. This case was referred to the public integrity section of the Justice Department when he became the border czar. The Trump administration was briefed on it at some point. And then the FBI was not allowed to take further investigative steps. And so they didn't get to track and see whether he fulfilled his promise. And at some point, the investigation was closed, rather recently, actually formally closed after it withered for some time. Now, the White House is saying that there was no illegality here. They're implying that this was a politically motivated probe, and the Justice Department is saying that prosecutors looked at this and found no laws broken. Our sources are saying something entirely different. There's a lot of unanswered questions here. One of the biggest questions I'm getting about this story, Anna, is did Tom Homan keep the money? I mean, this was $50,000 from the taxpayers. What happened to it? We don't know the answer. I've asked the White House today that question. I will let you know as soon as I hear an answer to that.
And do we know whether he did try to make good on the promises that he allegedly made these people in accepting that money?
That's not clear because this was, as we understand it, this is an FBI undercover operation and a fake company. So it's not clear that they could have gotten contracts. Obviously, they would have, had they gone through their investigation, they might have taken a number of steps, monitored his communications, watched his every move to see exactly what was happening. You know, he was working as a lobbyist, essentially an influence peddler, getting paid, and that's legal, you know, to try to influence government policy as it was. What's alleged here, though, is something much different, cash surreptitiously given to him by undercover FBI agents.
Now, Mark, Congressman Adam Schiff reacted to Ken's reporting, posting, quote, Pam Bondi knew, Kash Patel knew, Emil Bobby knew, and they made the investigation go away. Do you see Democrats taking this further? And with the GOP in control of Congress, will those efforts even go anywhere?
Well, probably not as far as, you know, impeachment or investigations, as long as Republicans control the House. I mean, but I do think that, I mean, Adam Schiff is, I mean, the biggest weapon Democrats have here is just the sunlight of this. And obviously, you know, Ken and other reporters have brought this to light. And it certainly stinks. And I think, you know, you can talk about the legalities of this and why they didn't bring a case and so forth. It certainly looks like they were taking care of their own, but it also, anything that involves a bag of cash is a bad look, full stop, right? I mean, I think it's interesting that it's a Cava bag in this case, because it sort of triggered all kinds of discussion about Cava orders and so forth. But no, bags of cash are bad. And, you know, it's certainly not a good look for the administration. And as Chuck Schumer said before, they obviously feel they have other material that's more valuable, whether it's healthcare, whether it's prices, whether it's cost and so forth. But it certainly doesn't look good.
Catherine, what's your reaction to Ken's reporting?
Well, this is another example of elections have consequences, because the prior administration, those prosecutors, the FBI said, let's wait and see what happens. New administration comes in and says, we're stopping the investigation. So they could have prosecuted him before, but most prosecutors really want the highest charge you can prosecute, which is bribery, which they couldn't because he was a private citizen. So they waited, a new election, investigation ends.
Mark, your colleague David Frum says in The Atlantic the president is gambling that he can consolidate authority before the public turns too sharply against him. The president's so out in the open with his instructions. Are we seeing any cracks at this point in the president's political cover?
Yeah, it seems so. Look, as David said, I mean, as time wears on, you become closer to one being a lame duck in the 4-year context, but also you move closer to the midterms, and your biggest support system, which is the very, very obedient Republican Congress, becomes increasingly nervous and increasingly mindful of their own political positions, and that's reflected, potentially in the pretty low numbers the president's been receiving. Certainly on the economy, the concerns voters have around how the immigration matters being handled and inflation and so forth. So, yeah, the president is becoming more and more vulnerable by the day. So I think what David was getting at, and I think it's a good point, is that time is very much on the mind of the president and probably his closest advisors, because they don't have that much time to do this, and they don't have the political capital that's going to last forever.
Mark Leibovich, Ken Delaney, and Catherine Christian, thank you all for starting us off.